The blood on Delilah Wright's dress was not her own, but the town of Scottsbluff, Nebraska treated her as though she carried the mark of Cain himself. She pressed her back against the general store wall on that scorching August afternoon in 1878, watching the women cross the street rather than walk past her, their skirts kicking up dust as they whispered behind gloved hands. 3 months ago, she had been one of them, respectable and invited to church socials. Then the fever took her parents within days of each other, and the bank took the farm, and Delilah learned that survival sometimes meant swallowing pride along with shame. The Silver Spur Saloon was not the worst establishment in town, but it was not a place for decent women. Delilah served drinks and sang occasionally, nothing more, though the assumptions people made about saloon girls painted them all with the same scarlet brush. She needed to eat. She needed a roof over her head. The job paid enough for a small room above the dress shop and food twice a day. It was honest work as far as she was concerned, but honest work did not matter when reputation was everything. Miss Wright. The voice was deep and measured, and Delilah turned to find Benjamin Adams standing a respectful distance away, his hat in his hands. She recognized him as one of the ranch hands from the Three Rivers outfit, though he kept mostly to himself when he came to town. He had sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of prairie grass after rain, and he was looking at her like she was a person, not a cautionary tale. Mr. Adams. She smoothed her dress, conscious of how plain it was, how worn at the hem. I could not help but notice those ladies giving you trouble. He gestured toward the retreating backs of the church women. Seems unnecessarily cruel. Delilah lifted her chin. They have made their opinions clear. I work at the saloon, so I must be beyond redemption. What do you do there? I serve drinks. Sometimes I sing. Nothing that would shock anyone, but the location seems to be sin enough. Benjamin studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. Work is work, and you survived. That takes more courage than hiding behind righteousness while judging others. The words hit Delilah like cool water on sunburned skin. She had expected judgment, propositions, or pity. She had not expected understanding. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That is kind of you to say. It is not kindness, it is fact." He settled his hat back on his head. "I was wondering if you might do me the honor of having supper with me tomorrow evening. There is a restaurant on 3rd Street that serves decent roast chicken." Delilah stared at him. "You want to be seen in public with me. I want to have supper with a woman who interests me. What other people think is their concern, not mine. You will be judged by association. Then we will be judged together." His smile was slight but genuine. 6 o'clock. She should have said no. Associating with her would damage his reputation, might even cost him his job if the ranch owner heard about it. But Delilah was so tired of being invisible, of being shunned, of eating alone in her tiny room while the rest of the world moved on without her. 6 o'clock, she agreed. Benjamin tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Delilah pressed against the wall with something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope was a luxury she could not afford, but it crept in anyway, stubborn as prairie grass pushing through drought-hardened soil. The next evening, Delilah wore her best dress, a blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She had saved it from the sale of her family belongings, unable to part with the last thing her mother had made for her. The bodice was fitted, the skirt full, and she paired it with a cream shawl even though the August heat barely required it. Armor came in many forms. Benjamin was waiting outside the restaurant at precisely 6 o'clock, wearing clean trousers and a pressed shirt. He offered his arm, and Delilah took it, feeling the strength beneath the fabric. They walked into the restaurant together, and conversation stuttered and stopped like a music box winding down, every eye in the room fixed on them. "We could leave," Benjamin murmured, but there was steel in his voice, not retreat. "We could stay," Delilah countered, matching his tone. They sat at a table by the window, and slowly the other diners returned to their meals, though Delilah could feel the weight of their stares like hands pressing on her shoulders. The waitress was cool but professional, taking their orders with clipped efficiency. "Tell me about yourself," Benjamin said once they were alone. "Beyond what the gossips say." Delilah folded her hands in her lap. "There is not much to tell. My parents had a small farm outside town. We grew corn mostly, some wheat. It was a good life, simple. Then the fever came through last spring, and I lost them both within 3 days of each other. The bank held the mortgage, and I could not keep up the payments alone. They foreclosed, and suddenly I had nothing. No family, no money, no prospects. That must have been terrifying. It was." Delilah looked down at her hands. "I tried to find respectable work. I asked at every shop, every business in town. But I was alone, without references beyond my parents who were dead, and people worried about my character. An unmarried woman with no family can be a liability, apparently. The saloon was the only place that would hire me." "What about marriage? I imagine you had suitors before." Delilah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I did, actually. A clerk at the bank. We had an understanding, or so I thought. He stopped calling after my parents died. Said his mother did not think I was suitable anymore, not without a dowry or family connections. Then he was a fool." The food arrived, saving Delilah from having to respond. The roast chicken was tender, the vegetables seasoned well, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. Delilah watched Benjamin from beneath her lashes, noting the calluses on his hands, the careful way he moved, like a man used to being around skittish animals. "What about you?" she asked. "How did you end up in Scottsbluff?" Benjamin wiped his mouth with his napkin. "I am originally from Missouri. My father had a small ranch, but he died when I was 16 and my mother sold the land to my uncle. I worked for him for a few years, learned the cattle business, but we did not see eye to eye on much. So I headed west, picked up work where I could find it. Been with 3 Rivers for about 2 years now. It is good steady work and the foreman is fair." "You like it?" "I do. I like being outside, working with the cattle. There is something honest about it, you know. The work is hard, but it is real. A cow does not care about your reputation or your family name. It just wants to be fed and watered and left to graze." Delilah smiled. "That sounds peaceful. It can be. It can also be backbreaking and frustrating and occasionally dangerous. But I would rather do this than sit behind a desk somewhere, pretending to care about ledgers." They talked through the rest of dinner, the conversation flowing easier than Delilah had expected. Benjamin was thoughtful and listened more than he spoke, asking questions that suggested genuine interest rather than polite obligation. When the bill came, he paid without fuss, then offered his arm again for the walk back. The evening air had cooled slightly, though heat still radiated from the packed earth streets. Lanterns flickered to life in windows, and somewhere a dog barked. Delilah felt the knot in her chest loosen slightly. For one evening, she had been treated like a woman worth knowing, not a scandal to avoid. "Thank you for dinner," she said when they reached the dress shop where she rented her room, "and for not caring what people think." "I care what you think," Benjamin said. "The rest does not matter much to me. You might change your mind when your boss hears about this. Mr. Garrett is more concerned with whether I can rope a steer than who I have dinner with, and if he is not, then I will find work elsewhere." He paused, his expression serious. "May I see you again?" "Perhaps next Sunday, if you are free." Delilah hesitated. Saying yes meant accepting that this could become something, that Benjamin was willing to weather the town's judgment for her sake. It also meant risking her own heart, which had already been bruised enough for 1 year. But the alternative was returning to her lonely room and pretending she did not want more. "Yes," she said, "I would like that." Benjamin smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger, less guarded. "Good, I will call for you at 2 o'clock." He waited until she was safely inside before walking away, his boots echoing on the wooden boardwalk. Delilah climbed the narrow stairs to her room, her heart beating faster than the exertion warranted. She was being foolish, letting herself hope. But sometimes foolishness was the only thing that kept a person going. The week passed slowly. Delilah worked her shifts at the Silver Spur, serving drinks to cowboys and miners and traveling salesmen. Most were polite enough, though she had to deflect unwanted advances more than once. The owner, a weathered man named Jack Thornton, kept order and did not tolerate anyone mistreating his employees. It was not ideal work, but it was better than starving, and Delilah was grateful for it even as the town judged her for it. On Sunday, she dressed carefully in the same blue dress, since it was the only nice one she owned. Benjamin arrived exactly at 2, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers that made Delilah laugh with surprised pleasure. "Where did you find these?" "There is a meadow about a mile from the ranch." "I rode out this morning." He looked almost shy, this tall, capable man offering her flowers like a schoolboy. "They are beautiful, thank you." They walked to the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open prairie. The grass stretched endlessly, gold and green under the brilliant blue sky. Benjamin spread a blanket under a cottonwood tree and they sat together, watching clouds drift past. "You ever miss your farm?" he asked. Delilah plucked at the grass. "Every day, not just the land but what it represented, security, family, a place where I belonged." She glanced at him. "Does that sound foolish?" "No, it sounds human." Benjamin leaned back on his elbows. "I miss my father's ranch sometimes too, not the way it was at the end with my uncle running things, but before, when my father was alive and the work felt like it meant something." "Do you want your own ranch someday?" "Maybe. It takes capital I do not have, and land is not cheap, but I have been saving my wages and I am patient." He turned his head to look at her. "What about you? What do you want?" No one had asked Delilah that question in months. Everyone assumed they knew what she needed, what she should do, but no one had bothered to ask what she wanted. She thought about it, watching a hawk circle overhead. "I want to feel safe again," she said finally. "I want to stop worrying about where my next meal will come from or whether I can pay my rent. I want to be able to walk down the street without people whispering. And I want to sing properly, not just snippets between drink orders." "You have a good voice." "I do not know if it is good, but I enjoy it. My mother taught me. She said music was a gift, something no one could take from you." "Will you sing something now?" Delilah felt her cheeks warm. "Right here, why not? There is no one around but me and the birds, and we are a forgiving audience." She laughed, then drew a breath and began to sing. It was an old ballad her mother had loved, something about lost love and longing, and Delilah let her voice rise into the prairie air. When she finished, Benjamin was staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. "You should be singing in concert halls, not saloons. Concert halls do not hire penniless orphans. Then concert halls are missing out." They spent the afternoon talking, sharing stories about their childhoods and their dreams. Benjamin told her about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about long cattle drives and stampedes under lightning-split skies. Delilah described harvest seasons and church socials, and the year a twister passed so close they could hear it roar like a living thing. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Benjamin helped her to her feet. They walked back toward town slowly, neither wanting the day to end. "Delilah," Benjamin said as they reached her door, "I want to be honest with you about something." Her stomach clenched. Here it was, the moment he would explain this had been nice but could not continue. "All right. I am not wealthy. I make decent wages, but I do not have much saved yet. I live in the bunkhouse at the ranch, and my prospects are only as good as my willingness to work. But I would like to court you properly if you will have me. I know the town will talk, and I know it might make things harder for you, but I think you are worth it." Delilah felt tears prick her eyes. "You barely know me. Then I would like to know you better. Much better, if you will let me." She thought about the lonely months since her parents died, the shame and isolation. She thought about Benjamin's steady presence, the way he looked at her like she mattered. It was too soon to call it love, but it was something, and something was more than she had hoped for. "Yes," she whispered. "I would like that very much." Benjamin smiled, and this time he took her hand, holding it gently in his own. "Then we will face whatever comes together." The town's reaction to their courtship was predictable. The church women clucked their tongues and warned Benjamin that he was making a mistake. The men at the saloon made crude jokes that Jack Thornton quickly shut down. The owner of the general store refused to serve Delilah until Benjamin threatened to take his business elsewhere, at which point the man backed down with poor grace. But Benjamin did not waver. He called on Delilah twice a week, taking her for walks or dinners, or simply sitting with her in her small room, talking until the stars came out. He brought her books from the ranch library, and small gifts he carved from wood during long evenings. A bird, a horse, a flower, each one perfect in its simplicity. "Where did you learn to do this?" Delilah asked one evening, turning a wooden rabbit over in her hands. "My father taught me, said a man should know how to make things, not just use them. It gives you something to do with your hands when the days are long." Delilah set the rabbit on her shelf with the other carvings. "I will treasure these. They are just scraps of wood." "No," she said firmly. "They are pieces of you given freely. That makes them precious." Benjamin crossed the small room and took her hands in his. They had not kissed yet, both aware that one wrong move could damage the fragile trust they were building. But Delilah wanted to kiss him, wanted to feel his arms around her, wanted to believe that this could be real and lasting. "Delilah," he said, his voice rough, "I am falling in love with you. I need you to know that. This is not charity or pity. This is me choosing you, wanting you." Her breath caught. "Benjamin, you do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know." But Delilah shook her head. "I am falling in love with you too. I have been fighting it because I was afraid, but I cannot fight it anymore. You are the best thing that has happened to me in a very long time." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "May I kiss you, please?" The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deepened as Delilah leaned into him. She felt the strength in his body, the tenderness in his touch, and something inside her that had been locked tight since her parents died finally began to open. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I should go," Benjamin said, though he made no move to leave. "I do not want to compromise you," Delilah laughed shakily. "The town already thinks I am compromised. I do not care what the town thinks. I care what you think of yourself, and I will not have anyone say I took advantage of you." It was that more than anything that made Delilah certain. Benjamin respected her, not just her body but her dignity, her right to choose. "Then come back tomorrow," she said, "and the day after that, and the day after that, as long as you will have me." The autumn came, bringing cooler temperatures and the smell of harvest on the wind. Benjamin continued his work at Three Rivers Ranch, and Delilah continued at the saloon, saving every penny she could. They talked about the future in careful terms, not wanting to jinx it but unable to avoid planning. Benjamin wanted to buy land eventually, start his own small ranch. Delilah wanted a home again, a place to belong. What if we did it together? Benjamin asked one evening as they walked along the river. Pooled our savings, bought a piece of land, as partners, as husband and wife. He stopped walking and turned to face her. I know it has only been a few months, but I am sure. I want to build a life with you, Delilah. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to work beside you and raise children with you and grow old together. Will you marry me? Delilah felt tears stream down her cheeks. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Benjamin pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple silver band that must have cost him weeks of wages. He slid it onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, deep and thorough, and Delilah kissed him back with all the love and hope she had been carrying. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the courthouse, with Jack Thornton and one of Benjamin's fellow ranch hands as witnesses. The church had refused to perform the ceremony, the pastor citing Delilah's employment as grounds for concern. Benjamin had told him exactly what he thought of that reasoning, and they had walked out together, hand in hand. I do not need a church's blessing to know this is right, Benjamin said as they stood before the judge. Neither do I, Delilah agreed. The judge, an older man with kind eyes, smiled at them. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Nebraska, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride, Mr. Adams. Benjamin did, thoroughly, and Delilah clung to him, dizzy with happiness. They were married. She was Delilah Adams now, and for the first time since her parents died, she felt like she had a family again. Jack Thornton had given Delilah the week off for her honeymoon, and Benjamin had arranged time away from the ranch. They stayed in a small hotel in town, spending their days exploring the countryside and their nights learning each other's bodies with patience and wonder. Benjamin was gentle, always asking if she was all right, if she wanted to continue, and Delilah loved him more for it. I never thought I could feel this way, she whispered one night as they lay tangled together. So safe, so loved. Benjamin kissed her forehead. You are loved, so deeply loved, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you. When they returned to their regular lives, things shifted. Delilah gave notice at the saloon, explaining that she would be leaving to help Benjamin with his plans. Jack was sorry to see her go but understanding, giving her a bonus for her months of faithful service. You are a good woman, Delilah, he said. Do not let anyone tell you different. And if you ever need anything, you come find me. Thank you, Jack, for giving me a chance when no one else would. You earned every penny. Now go build that life you have been dreaming about. Benjamin had been talking to his foreman about opportunities, and Mr. Garrett had offered him a deal. There was a piece of land adjacent to the Three Rivers property, about 100 acres that the owner wanted to sell. It was good grazing land with a creek running through it and a small cabin that needed work. Mr. Garrett would loan Benjamin part of the purchase price in exchange for first rights to buy any cattle Benjamin raised. It is a good deal, Benjamin explained as they rode out to see the property. Fair terms, and it gives us a start. The cabin is rough, but I can fix it up. We can run a small herd, maybe 20 or 30 head to start. It will not make us rich, but it will be ours. The land was beautiful, rolling hills covered in prairie grass, the creek a silver ribbon through the center. The cabin was indeed rough, one room with a leaky roof and gaps in the walls, but Delilah could see the potential. With work, it could be a home. What do you think? Benjamin asked, anxious. I think it is perfect, Delilah said. I think we should do it. They signed the papers a week later, and Delilah Adams became a landowner, something she had never imagined possible after losing her family's farm. Benjamin threw himself into fixing up the cabin, working every spare moment. Delilah helped where she could, learning to mix mortar and hammer nails. The other ranch hands pitched in too, impressed by Benjamin's determination and charmed by Delilah's willingness to work. By December, the cabin was weatherproofed and warm, with a proper stove and real glass in the windows. They moved in just as the first snow began to fall, carrying their few possessions across the threshold together. "Welcome home, Mrs. Adams," Benjamin said, sweeping her into his arms. Delilah laughed and kissed him. "Welcome home, Mr. Adams. That first winter was hard." The wind howled across the prairie, piling snow in drifts that sometimes reached the cabin's eaves. Benjamin worked long hours caring for the small herd of cattle they had purchased, making sure they had access to water and what forage they could find. Delilah kept the cabin warm and cooked hearty meals, learning to make bread and stew, and everything else a ranch wife needed to know. Some days were easier than others. On the hardest days, when money was tight and the work seemed endless, they would sit together by the fire and remind each other why they had chosen this life. Benjamin would hold Delilah and tell her stories, and she would sing to him, and gradually the fear would recede. "We are going to make it," Benjamin would say. "I promise you, Delilah. We are going to build something good here," and Delilah believed him, not because it would be easy, but because they were doing it together. Spring came, bringing green grass and newborn calves. Their small herd began to grow, and Benjamin's careful management started to pay off. Mr. Garrett praised his work and increased the amount he was willing to loan for more cattle. Delilah planted a garden behind the cabin, coaxing vegetables from the Nebraska soil. In May, Delilah realized her monthly courses had stopped. She waited another few weeks to be sure, then told Benjamin one evening over dinner. "I think I am with child," she said quietly. Benjamin dropped his fork. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. I have missed 2 months now, and I have been feeling ill in the mornings." He was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms. "A baby, we are going to have a baby." Delilah felt tears on her cheeks, happy tears this time. "Are you pleased?" "Pleased, Delilah, I am overjoyed. You are giving me everything I ever wanted. A home, a family, a life worth living." They told Mr. Garrett the next day, and he congratulated them warmly. The other ranch hands teased Benjamin good-naturedly, offering advice and horror stories about fatherhood. Delilah visited the doctor in town, who confirmed her suspicions. She was indeed pregnant, due sometime in January. The town's response was mixed. Some women, seeing that Delilah was now a respectable married woman and landowner, softened toward her. Others remained cold, unable to forgive her past employment. Delilah found she did not care as much anymore. She had Benjamin, she had their land, and soon she would have a child. The opinions of judgmental strangers mattered less and less. Her pregnancy was relatively easy, though the summer heat made her uncomfortable. Benjamin fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest and drink water and stay out of the sun. Delilah tolerated it with good humor, knowing it came from love. "You do realize women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she said one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from weeding the garden. "Yes, but you are having my baby, which makes it different." "How exactly?" "Because I love you more than anything in this world, and the thought of something happening to you terrifies me." Delilah softened, setting down her hoe to cup his face. "Nothing is going to happen to me. I am strong and I have you. We are going to be fine." He pulled her close, mindful of her swelling belly. "Promise me." "I promise." The baby came on a cold January night during a blizzard. The doctor could not get through the snow, so Benjamin delivered his son with the help of one of the ranch wives, a capable woman named Margaret, who had birthed 5 children of her own. Delilah labored for hours, gripping Benjamin's hand until she thought she might break his bones, and finally, just before dawn, their son slid into the world with a lusty cry. "A boy," Margaret announced, wrapping the baby in clean towels. "A big, healthy boy." Benjamin was crying, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his son. "He is perfect. Delilah, he is perfect." Delilah was exhausted, but she reached for the baby, cradling him against her chest. He had dark hair and Benjamin's nose and lungs that clearly worked just fine. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." They named him Daniel after Benjamin's father. Daniel Wright Adams, a name that carried both their families forward. Benjamin was a devoted father from the start, changing nappies and walking the floor with Daniel during fussy nights. Delilah watched him with their son and fell in love all over again. "You are wonderful with him," she said one evening as Benjamin rocked Daniel to sleep. "He is my son. Of course I am going to care for him. Not all men do. Then they are fools. This is the best part of life, Delilah. This right here, you and Daniel in our home. Everything else is just details." As Daniel grew, so did the ranch. Benjamin bought more cattle, expanded the herd, hired a hand to help with the work. Delilah sold vegetables and eggs in town, adding to their income. Slowly, steadily, they built something solid. The cabin was expanded, gaining 2 more rooms and a proper porch. The land was fenced, the creek dammed to create a stock pond. On Daniel's 2nd birthday, Benjamin surprised Delilah with a piano. It was used and slightly out of tune, but it was hers. He had saved for months, arranging to have it hauled from Cheyenne by wagon. "Benjamin, this is too much," Delilah protested, even as her fingers itched to touch the keys. "It is not nearly enough. You gave up your music for us. I want you to have it back." Delilah sat down and began to play, her fingers remembering the lessons her mother had given her years ago. Daniel clapped his chubby hands and Benjamin stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders, and Delilah felt complete. That evening, after Daniel was asleep, they sat on the porch and watched the stars. The prairie stretched out before them, dark and vast, full of possibility. "Do you ever regret it?" Benjamin asked quietly. "Marrying me, choosing this life?" Delilah took his hand. "Not once. Not for a single moment. You saved me, Benjamin, not just from poverty or shame, but from believing I did not deserve happiness. You taught me that work is work and surviving is enough, that I was enough just as I was. You were always more than enough. I just had the good sense to see it. We saved each other then." "Yes," he agreed. "I think we did." 3 years later, Delilah gave birth to their 2nd child, a daughter they named Grace. She had Delilah's fair hair and Benjamin's green eyes and a temperament as sunny as a summer day. Daniel adored his little sister, following her around and protecting her from imagined dangers. The ranch continued to prosper. They had over 100 head of cattle now, and Benjamin had paid back his loan to Mr. Garrett ahead of schedule. The cabin had become a proper house, with 4 bedrooms and a parlor and a kitchen big enough for Delilah to cook and bake to her heart's content. They hired a school teacher to come 3 times a week to teach Daniel his letters and numbers, and Delilah taught him music on the piano. The town had changed too. New families moved in, less concerned with old scandals. The women who had shunned Delilah grew old and died or simply learned to let go of their judgment. Delilah became known as Mrs. Adams, the rancher's wife with the beautiful voice who sang at church socials and community gatherings. Some people still remembered the girl who worked at the Silver Spur, but most did not care. She had proven herself respectable through years of hard work and devoted motherhood. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Benjamin took Delilah back to the spot where he had first proposed, the meadow by the cottonwood tree. They left the children with Margaret for the afternoon and rode out together, just the two of them. 10 years, Delilah marveled as they spread a blanket under the tree. Has it really been that long? The best 10 years of my life, Benjamin said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. I wanted to give you something special. Inside was a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a pendant shaped like a musical note. Delilah gasped. Benjamin, it is beautiful. You like it. I love it. Help me put it on. He fastened it around her neck, then kissed the spot where the chain rested against her skin. You are everything to me, Delilah. My partner, my love, the mother of my children. I would not have any of this without you. We built it together, Delilah said, echoing the words they had said so many times over the years. Everything we have, we made together. They lay in the grass, watching clouds drift past, just as they had a decade ago. But so much had changed. They were not tentative potential lovers anymore. They were husband and wife, parents, ranchers, partners in every sense of the word. You remember what you told me the day we met? Delilah asked. I said work is work and you survived. You were the first person to say that to me. The first person to see my job at the saloon as what it was, survival, not sin. You gave me permission to stop being ashamed. Benjamin rolled onto his side to face her. You never should have been ashamed. You did what you had to do and you did it with dignity. That takes more strength than most people have. I was so afraid back then, afraid I would never be more than the girl who worked at the saloon, that I would always be judged and found wanting. And now I know that other people's judgment does not define me. My choices define me, and I chose you. I chose this life, and I would choose it again, 1,000 times over. They made love there in the meadow, under the open sky, with the same passion and tenderness that had characterized their entire marriage. Afterward, they lay wrapped in each other's arms, talking about their children and the ranch and their dreams for the future. I want to expand the house again, Benjamin said. Add a proper music room for you with good acoustics. That is extravagant. You deserve extravagance. Besides, Grace is showing an interest in music too. She will need a place to practice. Delilah smiled. Then yes, let's add a music room. And maybe a better barn while we are at it. The current one is getting cramped. Always practical. One of us has to be. They rode home as the sun began to set, racing each other across the prairie like children. Benjamin won, but only barely, and they were both laughing as they dismounted in front of their house. Their house on their land filled with their children. It was more than Delilah had ever dared hope for. The years continued to pass, marked by seasons and harvests and small milestones. Daniel grew tall and strong, learning the ranch business from his father. Grace learned piano and developed a voice even better than Delilah's, pure and clear as a bell. They had one more child, another son named Thomas, born when Delilah was 35. He was their surprise baby, unexpected but deeply loved. Benjamin's hair started to gray at the temples, and Delilah found lines around her eyes that had not been there before. But they were happy lines, earned through laughter and smiles, and she wore them proudly. They had worked hard and built something lasting, something that would outlive them. On quiet evenings after the children were in bed, Benjamin and Delilah would sit on the porch and talk. Sometimes about the past, but mostly about the present and future. They discussed which cattle to sell, whether to plant more acres, how to handle Daniel's growing interest in a girl from town. The mundane details of life, made precious by their partnership. I have been thinking, Benjamin said one night when they were both in their 50s. About retiring, maybe, passing more of the ranch work to Daniel. Retiring to do what? Travel, maybe. You have never been further than Cheyenne. I would like to show you more of the world. San Francisco, maybe, or Denver. places with concert halls where you could hear real music. Delilah was touched. "What about the ranch?" "Daniel is ready. He has been ready for years. And Margaret's grandson would make a good foreman. We have earned the right to slow down, Delilah, to enjoy what we have built." She thought about it, imagining train rides and hotel rooms and concerts in grand halls. But she also thought about the ranch, the land they had carved from nothing, the home they had built together. "I do not need to see the world," she said finally. "Everything I need is right here. But maybe we could take a trip or two, see some new things, then come home." That sounds perfect. They did travel, taking several trips over the next few years. They saw San Francisco with its steep hills and foggy bay. They visited Denver and marveled at the grandeur of the mountains. They even went back to Missouri so Benjamin could show Delilah where he grew up. But they always came home to Nebraska, to the ranch and the prairie and the life they had built. Daniel married the girl from town, a sweet young woman named Sarah who fit seamlessly into ranch life. They gave Benjamin and Delilah their first grandchild, a boy named Benjamin after his grandfather. Grace pursued her music, singing at churches and community events throughout the region. Thomas, the surprise baby, showed an aptitude for business and began handling the financial side of the ranch. Delilah watched her children grow and thrive and felt a deep satisfaction. They were good people, kind and hardworking and honest. She and Benjamin had done well. One evening in late summer, when they were both in their 60s, Benjamin and Delilah walked out to the meadow by the cottonwood tree. It had become a tradition, this pilgrimage to the place where their life together had truly begun. They spread the same blanket, worn and faded now, and sat together watching the sunset. "You remember the first time we came here?" Delilah asked. "Every detail. You wore a blue dress and I brought you wildflowers. I was terrified you would say no. I almost did. I was so afraid of being hurt again. I know, but you were brave enough to take the chance anyway." Delilah leaned against his shoulder. "It was the best decision I ever made. You changed my life, Benjamin. You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when the world said I was worthless. You loved me when I could not love myself. You did the same for me. I was just drifting before I met you, doing the work but not really living. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to build something permanent." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear, first one, then dozens, then hundreds, until the sky was awash with light. "When I die," Delilah said quietly, "I want to be buried here. Under this tree. Do not talk about dying, we have years left, maybe, but when the time comes, this is where I want to rest, where our story began." Benjamin pulled her closer. "Then that is where we will both rest, together like everything else." They lived many more years, watching their grandchildren grow and welcoming great-grandchildren. The ranch continued to thrive under Daniel's management, expanding until it was one of the most successful operations in the region. Grace's daughter inherited her musical talent and went on to study in New York, sending letters full of descriptions of concerts and opera houses. Thomas opened a bank in town, using his business acumen to help other ranchers and farmers secure loans. Benjamin died first, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. Delilah held his hand as he slipped away, whispering that she loved him, that she would see him soon. The funeral was huge, with people coming from all over the state to pay their respects to the man who had been known for his fairness, his hard work, and his devotion to his wife. Delilah lived another 2 years, spending her time playing piano for her great-grandchildren and telling them stories about their grandfather. She spoke of the days when Scottsbluff was smaller, when the prairie was wilder, when a woman could be shunned for simply trying to survive. She told them about the cowboy who saw past the scandal to the person beneath, who said the words that changed her life. Work is work, and you survived. When Delilah died at 80, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, her last words were, "I am coming, Benjamin." They buried her next to him under the cottonwood tree in the meadow, just as she had requested. The headstones were simple, listing their names and dates in one line. Together in life, together in eternity. Years later, when Daniel's great-grandson asked about the graves under the cottonwood tree, the story was told again. About the woman who worked in a saloon to survive, and the cowboy who loved her for it. About how they built a ranch and a family and a life that lasted long after they were gone. About how love and respect and partnership could overcome any obstacle, any judgment, any hardship. The ranch still stood, passed down through generations. The house had been expanded and modernized, but the original cabin remained, preserved as a reminder of where it all began. The piano Delilah had played was in a place of honor in the parlor, still tuned, still used by her descendants who inherited her musical gift. And in the meadow, under the cottonwood tree, 2 headstones stood side by side, marking the resting place of Benjamin and Delilah Adams. In spring, wildflowers bloomed around the graves as if the earth itself remembered the bouquet a young cowboy had picked for the woman he loved. In summer, the grass grew tall and green. In autumn, leaves fell like golden rain. In winter, snow covered everything in white, peaceful and still. But the love story remained, told and retold, a testament to the power of seeing someone truly, of valuing dignity over reputation, of choosing love despite judgment. It was a story about survival and redemption, about building something lasting from nothing, about 2 people who found each other when they needed it most, and held on through everything that followed. Benjamin had told Delilah once that work is work, and she survived, giving her permission to stop being ashamed. But he had given her so much more than that. He had given her himself, his love, his unwavering support. He had given her a home and a family and a future. And Delilah had given him the same, her strength and passion and devotion, her willingness to work beside him through every challenge. Their children carried their legacy forward, running the ranch with the same integrity and dedication their parents had shown. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren learned the values Benjamin and Delilah had lived by. Hard work, respect, love, partnership, the courage to stand against judgment when you know you are right. The ranch prospered through economic hardships and droughts and changing times. Anchored by the solid foundation 2 people had laid more than a century before. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right across the prairie, people swore they could hear music drifting from the meadow by the cottonwood tree. A woman's voice, pure and clear, singing the old ballads. And if you listened very carefully, you might hear a man's laughter, deep and warm, and the sound of 2 people deeply in love, together at last and forever in the land they had claimed as their own. The story of Benjamin and Delilah Adams became legend in Scottsbluff, passed down through generations as an example of what love could accomplish. Schools taught it as local history. The Historical Society preserved their original marriage certificate and the deed to their land. Their descendants spoke of them with pride. These 2 people who had refused to let society's judgment define them, who had built something beautiful and lasting despite every obstacle. And under the cottonwood tree in the meadow, the wildflowers continued to bloom every spring, year after year after year, a living testament to a cowboy who saw a woman's worth when the rest of the world refused to look, and to the woman who was brave enough to believe him. Together they had faced down shame and poverty and judgment, and together they had won, leaving behind a legacy that would never be forgotten. Their love story was not a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real, earned through hard work and determination, and an unwavering commitment to each other. It was a story about choosing to see the person, not the scandal, about valuing survival over reputation, about building a life together, one day at a time, through every challenge and triumph. It was about two people who found each other in the hardest of circumstances and held on, creating something that outlasted them both and touched every generation that followed. And that, more than anything, was the true measure of their love. Not the grand gestures or romantic moments, though there had been plenty of those, but the everyday choice to stand together, to work together, to love each other through everything life threw at them. Benjamin and Delilah Adams had taken their chances on each other, and in doing so, they had built something eternal. Their story lived on, inspiring others to be brave, to love deeply, to look past surface judgments to the person beneath. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy anyone could leave behind.